Hello, this is the LSAT Demon Daily. My name is Eric, and joining me today is Charlie Mirsky. He's a former LSAT Demon student, and he crushed the LSAT and is now experiencing what before our recording you described as a dream application cycle, I think. So excited to get into that. But first and foremost, hi, Charlie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I just ran in from class. I'm a senior at Lafayette College, so I'm still doing classes, and I'm happy to be here. I've been such a fan of both podcasts, and Nathan and Ben, and I've seen you on recent videos. So this is all kind of like full circle being here. So very excited.
Oh, well, thank you. It's great to have you on. So start with the basics of your LSAT journey. Where did you start? Where did you end up? Just an overview of your timeline.
Yeah, I guess I don't know whether I should say I was an abnormality because I'm not sure. I guess there are a lot of people that say they knew they wanted to go to law school before getting to undergrad. I did know very early. So I came to undergrad really thinking like, I want to get this going. My first summer of undergrad, that's when COVID hit. So I had an internship that was canceled. So I was planning on taking the LSAT later. But my first summer of college, I just found myself with way too much free time. So I kind of studied a little bit in the winter break of my freshman year. And then I really started studying throughout the summer of my freshman year. So I get, it's hard for me to say like a diagnostic because I took like 6 untimed practice tests before taking my actual diagnostic. So definitely not a cold diagnostic. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure where I really started at, but my first timed practice test, I got a 155. And at the time I was pretty excited about that, but I didn't know how to think about that because I had taken 6 practice tests. For all I know, my real diagnostic was like 140 or in the 130s. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. You had some exposure to the test by that point.
Yeah, so definitely to say I started at 155 is just not true. Yeah, so I did that, and I started not with the Demon, although I was on the podcast very early, which was really helpful. That said, I've been a big fan of both podcasts, and when I found out about the Demon, I did use the Demon. I never did live, and I probably should have. I know when I'm recommending LSAT practice products, I always say like, you should go with the Demon. And a lot of people say really good things about the live, but I just can't vouch for it because I haven't been on it. But I think the explanations on the Demon are unmatched. I think they're so good. And I usually go for the written explanations. And then if I'm not like getting it immediately from the written explanations, I'll watch the videos. Also, the videos are always just so entertaining. Sometimes I just watch them because they're fun, nice. Which is another reason why the live probably is what I should have done. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of worked my way through everything. I definitely felt myself struggling in the beginning. It took me a while to get out of the 150s. I wasn't one of those people who just jumped right out of there. I mean, it's possible that because of those 6 practice tests I did beforehand, I did jump a lot because I don't know, again, what my diagnostic would have been. But, I was getting into the low 160s. And I remember I hit 168 once, and that got me really, really excited. And then it went back down. And yeah, I just kind of did one section at a time. I kind of followed Nathan's advice. I didn't get too hung up on like doing full length practice tests. I did do them maybe one every 2 weeks, but for the most part, it was one section at a time. I really had it where I think my schedule was like, I was doing maybe 2 sections a day, 6 days a week.
That is a lot. That's a lot of. Was this you mentioned during your winter break and a summer break, was this during this time, or were you now studying while in school?
I didn't study basically at all while in school, except for the first 2 weeks of I guess what would have been the fall semester, but it was also the Zoom semester. So like it wasn't full like in person. So I was waking up early.
Squeeze in a time section before class.
Yeah, they should talk about that more. They used to always talk about get up early, do the LSAT first thing, use your best hour.
That was my approach when working full time. I committed to, well, I'm still going to be working my full time job, and at that point also a part time job on the side, and I'm just going to commit to waking up an hour earlier so that I can squeeze in a time section or an hour of drilling before work.
Yeah, exactly. I found that the review could happen later, but I feel like when you're really focused and you're doing time sections, you gotta, I mean, I guess I should only speak for myself, but I had to use my first hours on that. I needed it to be my first coffee of the day, not my second. That's, yeah.
Great advice. So you kept it that throughout the summer. At what point did you register? Did you feel that you were ready to register for an official test?
When I was scoring consistently between like 168 and kind of anywhere in the 170s, although in that period of time, I was never really scoring higher than 176. That was about the highest my range was going. But I guess the standard range, 169 to 176. But once that started happening, I thought I was ready to give it a crack. And I did have it in my mind because of the podcast. I was like, I'm willing to take this more than once. There are lots of things in retrospect that I would change, but it's easy to say now.
What would you change?
Well, I think Nathan and Ben are so right to say, don't worry about the LSAT until you've graduated, take years off beforehand. Don't just study the LSAT, have a full-time job, and really pursue something else while studying for the LSAT. That would be the thing. I mean, because I'm not able to study and do undergrad at the same time. That's why the summer was so important. And the fact that I had no summer job, that was really important. Yeah. So if I had to say one thing, it'd be wait till later. I ended up, because if I knew back then that I was going to have such a good cycle, I wouldn't have tried to retake, but I did study to retake. And I kind of had a lot of gaps in between the retaking because I wasn't going to study during the semester. And if I had put off all of this stuff and just started studying, I guess, after I graduated and gotten a job and everything, then I could have just studied and kept retaking it. And instead, I always felt this pressure of kind of getting back the skills, studying in the summer, and then kind of feeling rushed because I'm like, oh, I have to take the test before the next semester starts. And that's just not a good way to go about things. And I would never advise somebody to do that. And that's why I ended up applying with a 172 on record. When I started restudying, I was scoring in the high 170s and definitely could have done that. So, and in another year off, I would have done that. So I guess if my cycle didn't go as well as it has been going, you might find me not going to law school next year.
Gotcha. Well, let's get into that if you don't mind. You could have gotten more greedy, ended with a 172, applied with that perfectly respectable score. Could have gotten more greedy, but applied with that, and it seems to be working out for you.
It's been working out really, really well. In part, again, because I'm following Nathan and Ben's advice. I started very early with my applications. I definitely didn't push off getting ready till like the next cycle. I applied to all my schools I could in either September or early October. So I really tried to get in quickly with a good application, asking all my recommenders very early. And yeah, I've had a really good cycle. I haven't heard from Stanford or Yale yet, but I've heard yes from basically every other place below them. There were some where I withdrew and some where I was offered an interview and didn't take them. So some of those places you get like automatically rejected, like Cornell rejected me because I didn't do their interview. But yeah, I've had a really, really good cycle.
Nice. Any schools that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be in Chicago and Harvard. There was a time where I was thinking about there was like this moment of panic where I was like, oh, I need to early decision to Chicago because I love Chicago so much. And then I was like, no, don't early decision.
Leave your options open for sure. Nice. Any temptation to take scholarship offers from other schools?
lots of temptation. Yeah, I mean, I still haven't heard all the places. I have gotten some full rides and really, good scholarship offers already from some of the really top places. But we're just going to have to see. I'm kind of waiting for it all to trickle in. But yeah, so excited. It's really unbelievable what putting time into the LSAT can do for you. I guess it's really hard to comprehend just how life-changing a few points on the LSAT can be, for better or for worse.
Great. So it sounds as if prioritizing the LSAT and getting your LSAT score really high, clearly the key to your success. Anything, I mean, is that your main advice for people currently going through this process or considering applying to law school? Just LSAT first, everything else comes after? Or is there more that you would add to what you think contributed to your success?
Yeah, well, I would say, and Ben and Nathan say this, GPA first, LSAT second. I'm not quite graduated yet, but I applied with a 4.0 from undergrad, which is very, very helpful. I definitely chose classes that were less risky than others. A lot of people are very concerned with, oh, I need to make sure my transcript reads like it's really rigorous, or or I need to be in STEM, or I need this and that. And I respect STEM and everything, but at the same time, like my transcript could look much scarier than it does. And at the end of the day, I am still admitted to Harvard with an LSAT that is slightly below the median. And I am straight out of undergrad. And a big part of that was focusing on having a really high GPA and picking classes that make that happen.
Because you knew early on that you wanted to go to law school and you knew that a GPA was going to be important for that.
Yes. But if you don't have that going for you, the LSAT is more powerful than the GPA. And I know lots of people who can make up. I have a friend Virginia right now, who had straight out of undergrad, no kind of URM status that would make him outperform what the predictors say. And he's in at Virginia because he did really well on the LSAT. I mean, the LSAT is so powerful, and I think it will always be so powerful.
So you prioritized your LSAT, which is awesome. Like you only get to knock on the door of Harvard and Chicago if your LSAT score is in the right range. But it doesn't get you all the way through the door. There are other aspects of your application that do matter, even if they matter less than LSAT. Was there anything else about your application or about how you approached admissions that you felt really helped get you through that door, that put you over the top?
Yeah. I started early with every single piece of the deal. And yes, started early with my essays, started early with making my resume look good, started early with thinking about these things. But one thing that I think separated my application from other applicants with similar numbers were probably the recommendations. I really spent time early on trying to build genuine friendships with my professors. I think one thing that really helps is reminding yourself, especially if you're still in undergrad, that there's nothing stopping you from becoming just as close with your professors or as you are with your friends. And the same goes for people who are older than you or more experienced with you. There's nothing stopping you from becoming really, really close with these people, so that they want to do you a real favor when they're writing you a letter. I think that made a big difference in my cycle.
Did you know early on who you wanted to write your letters?
It was more that in all my classes, I wanted to stand out to my professors, and I wanted to become close with all of them. And it kind of became clear over time which professors would end up being the best for writing letters. It ultimately turned out that I think 2 out of 3 of the professors who ended up writing letters for me asked me to write letters for me. So once you get that close with them, they want to help you. They're invested in you. They feel partly responsible for your outcomes. So it really kind of got to that point over time. But I ended up getting more letters than I knew what to do with.
Nice. Well, getting back to the LSAT for a bit, you started, maybe around low 150s, mid 150s. Were there any sections or concepts on the test that you found particularly challenging, or what you thought your biggest hurdles were when you were first starting out?
Yeah, when I first started out, like everyone, the games looked bad. I think on my diagnostic, but of course not even a diagnostic, I got like 13 wrong, and I was able to get that down to basically 0 every time just by doing I did all the games. Games,
Nice.
I think, are the most redoable. Like, don't be scared if you've done all the games, because especially if you go back to the early games, like, you're not really going to remember them. And the games are so repetitive to begin with that you're kind of already redoing games by doing games in the later sections anyway. So don't be scared of using up your practice materials for the games. That's one thing I'd say. But those are super improvable. Eventually, it got to the point where the reading comp was everything. It would be like, okay, I know that if I get -5 on the reading comp, then maybe I'll get a 170. If I get -1 on the reading comp, I'll get a 180. It really got to that point for me. So I guess I never really perfected the reading comp, but I was able to get good enough at it where the worst case scenario wasn't so bad.
Yeah, reading comp is a particularly intimidating section for a lot of people. And I think it's the one where perhaps most students feel progress comes slowest. You did progress, you made progress on reading comp. Was there anything that helped you get to your final level of comfort with RC?
Yeah, my final level of comfort came later. I never actually ended up taking the test with that final level of comfort, but I did study with it and I started scoring well. And I think it came from when I was studying last summer to retake. I never ended up retaking it, but I was studying last summer, and I forget who it was, but it was one of the demon tutors who was talking about like Super Mario and how the reading comp was like.
I think that was Carl.
I think that's right. Yeah. And I think he said something like, you need to, understand this one sentence before you can move on to the next one and treat it like checkpoints in Mario. And I actually never played Mario, but it still resonated. And I think that helped me a lot, like really slowing down, understanding one sentence at the time, really kind of getting that, because once you get an idea of where reading comp is going, and Nathan says this all the time, I keep referencing him, but what can you do? He says, like, you can predict what they're going to say next in the passages. And that's when it really started happening. And I did get to the point at the end where reading comp was much less intimidating. And I really felt like I wasn't rushing through it.
Beautiful. Yeah, taking the time to understand every sentence before moving on to the next one. It's amazing how frequently you can predict where they're going by either just understanding kind of what must come next for the argument to make sense, or asking questions, realizing what it is that you don't know. Like, well, you've told me this, but I still don't know this. So I'd like an answer to that question. Oh, look, the next sentence answers that question.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess the other thing about reading comp and the LSAT in general is really believing that you can do it. I think there were a lot of times where I was kind of stuck on the LSAT, and I was kind of telling myself, like, maybe there are just people who are smarter than you, who are just better at reading. Maybe I don't know, maybe their parents made them read more when they were younger or something. And I think really, like, telling yourself that, no, like, practice is gonna make it happen. I think that's really important, and can give you some more confidence when actually studying, because it's easy to get discouraged when you tell yourself it's not possible. So I guess the things you tell yourself really do make a difference, especially with this test.
Yeah, 100%. Positive self-talk, really important. And recognizing that these are skills that you can learn. You can train yourself to become better at these skills. And that's going to help you not just on the LSAT, but eventually when you get into Harvard and Chicago and go to law school. Those are lasting skills that will make a huge difference the rest of your life.
100%.
Charlie, it's been great chatting with you. Any final pieces of advice that you would give to current students or perhaps people just considering embarking on this journey?
If it's okay to say, I'd say have a backup plan. Minor in economics. I think it's a great thing to do. I didn't, but give yourself that option. Give yourself a real option to take time off after law school. It can make such a difference. It can relieve so much pressure from the actual LSAT, and just have all the options available so you can actually choose the best one rather than being forced into some suboptimal option like I did to myself.
That is good advice, I think, particularly taking a year off after school or multiple, like 11 years, like I did, to explore another career path, see what works for you. And when you eventually land on law school, if you do, you'll know that that's the right decision for you.
100%.
Well, Charlie, thanks so much again. Charlie is a former LSAT Demon student who crushed the LSAT and will be on his way to an excellent law school this fall. If you want to share your own LSAT success story or have some other LSAT or law school related news to share with us, you can email in at daily@lsatdemon.com. Thanks for listening.